you're looking to dive into topics on how to live a happier, healthier, more fit, and long lifespan, then you've come to the right podcast. Livin the Dream with me, Coach Damian Evans. Together, we will explore the topics on all things health, fitness, and wellness. Together, we will be lifelong learners on this journey to living the ultimate dream. What up, Dream Team? Coach D here, coming at you with a bite-sized brain snack. These episodes were inspired because of our obsession with snacks. We love to fuel our bodies with little bite-sized, nutritious foods. We've also talked about adding movement snacks into your day in the same way. So we have food and we have movement covered, but what about our brains? It's time to add some little bite-sized brain snacks into your week. That's what these episodes will be all about. Bite-sized wellness wisdom for lifelong learners. So let's open up and satiate our minds. This brain snack is all about fructose. Welcome to the fruity realm of fructose. Let me whisk you away on a delicious and informative adventure into the sweet and sometimes misunderstood world of this delightful sugar. Picture this. You're walking through a magical orchard where luscious fruits are hanging from trees, glistening under the warm sun. Among them, you spot a mischievous little sugar molecule, and this molecule is called fructose. With its charming taste and alluring sweetness, fructose is one of nature's captivating creations. Now let's uncover what makes fructose so intriguing. First off, fructose is a natural sugar found in fruits, honeys, and some vegetables. It's known for its sweetness, making it a popular ingredient in various food products, from desserts to beverages. What's good about fructose? Well, when it's in its natural form, tucked away in whole foods, it has a lower glycemic index compared to glucose, which means it doesn't cause a sharp spike in blood sugar levels. This characteristic can be particularly beneficial for individuals with diabetes or those aiming to maintain steady energy levels. Another fascinating aspect is that fructose doesn't rely on insulin for absorption into the cells. Insulin is like this doorkeeper, allowing glucose to enter cells and provide energy. But fructose, being the sneaky molecule that it is, it has a different entryway. So it can be an alternative energy source for people with insulin resistance or diabetes. However, let's not be fooled by fructose's sweet allure. Like any captivating character, it has its dark side. When consumed in excessive amounts, fructose can pose some health risks. One of the main concerns is that the impact it has on the liver. Unlike glucose, which can be readily metabolized by most cells in the body, fructose is mainly metabolized in the liver. So consuming large amounts of fructose over time, it can burden our livers, leading to the accumulation of fat and potentially contributing to liver disease. So let's address some common misconceptions about fructose. One popular myth is that fructose is inherently evil and solely responsible for our obesity epidemic. While excessive consumption of fructose, particularly in the form of added sugars like high fructose corn syrup, can contribute to weight gain, it's important to remember that moderation is key. Blaming a single sugar for all of our woes is an oversimplification of a very complex issue. Let's see how this all ties in to our brains. The connection between fructose and our gray matter is indeed intriguing. Some research suggests that fructose can influence brain function. It may affect your appetite regulation, leading to overeating or a preference for sweeter foods. Additionally, fructose metabolism in the brain may play a role in conditions like Alzheimer's disease, although further research is needed to fully understand this connection. Fructose is indeed a captivating character in the world of sugars. Its sweetness can bring joy and delight to our taste buds, but we must also be mindful of its potential pitfalls. Enjoy fructose in its natural form through fruits and vegetables, and remember that moderation is key when it comes to added sugars in your food. So embrace the fruity goodness of fructose, but don't let it lead you down a sugary path of excess. And now that we know a little bit more about fructose, let's talk about how fructose may damage the brain. There's a growing concern about the negative effects of consuming high concentrations of fructose, specifically in the brain. Large amounts of fructose damage the brain, and it might increase the risk of Alzheimer's. Here's how. Concentrated sources of fructose in your diet, primarily from high fructose corn syrup or soda or ultra-processed foods, this can increase something called uric acid levels. Uric acid, it damages the mitochondria in your cells. And damaged mitochondria means less energy production in the brain and in the body. This low energy state increases cravings for things like carbohydrates and sugars. And over time, this can lead to cognitive decline. And again, just to be clear, sugar is not the enemy. We are mostly concerned about liquid fructose in processed desserts and not really about natural fructose in whole fruit. In a recent episode of the Drew Proet podcast, they talked about the link between fructose and Alzheimer's, inspired by Dr. Richard Johnson's groundbreaking new hypothesis. Dr. Johnson is a professor of medicine at the University of Colorado, Denver, and has been practicing as a clinical physician and scientist for over 25 years. Now, this topic is near and dear to my heart because a lot of my loved ones are experiencing and have experienced before they passed away cognitive decline. It's brutal. It's brutal to watch. And it's brutal to watch someone who you used to know as so vibrant and full of energy be now trapped inside of their own head, unable to communicate what they want to say. I really wouldn't wish that on anyone. So I thought this episode was something really important to share. When talking about fructose, it's important to be clear that we're going to be talking about things like highly concentrated sources of fructose, high fructose corn syrup, frequent consumption of the things that we think of as fruit juice, orange juice, apple juice, that kind of thing, not the natural fructose that is in whole fruit. We're not trying to instill any fruit phobia here. Totally support fruit. We have a whole masterclass episode that I'll include a link in the description of this episode that talks about the truth about fruit. Is it good or is it bad? Check that out if you haven't listened to it yet. How has this evolutionary foraging response that served us so well back in the day, how is it now backfiring and causing us poor health? Well, if we go back in time, fructose, it's been in our diet forever. When our ancestors foraged for fruit, this survival mechanism in their brain would kick in and tell them to keep eating it. And in this interview with Dr. Johnson, he says that large amounts of fructose, they increase uric acid production, which tells the liver to turn any excess calories consumed from this fructose into fat. Meaning that if we don't use this as energy, the brain tells the body to store it as fat, like in the situation of a bear hibernating for winter. This mechanism helps our ancestors avoid starvation. But today, with 10% or more of the average person's calories coming from fructose, it's backfired, resulting in metabolic disaster. And as Dr. Johnson's hypothesis suggests, this metabolic devastation is not limited to just the body. It takes a massive toll on our brain health as well. If we look into the effects of fructose on our mitochondrial function, the function of our mitochondria, in addition to revving up fat production, uric acid damages these mitochondria and creates oxidative stress. When this happens, our energy levels drop. And when our energy levels drop, our body needs more energy. So what does it do? It increases cravings for carbs and sugar. When we consume significant amounts of fructose, our bodies receive this signal to direct blood flow toward the brain regions responsible for foraging behavior. Consequently, our ancestors were likely motivated to continue looking for this fruit and eating this fruit whenever it was accessible. However, this preference came with a trade-off: the reduction of blood flow to less vital brain regions, such as those involved in memory. And I guess this was a fair deal back at the time. But now, in a world where sugar is always at our fingertips, it now is causing oxidative stress, mitochondrial damage, and the deterioration of our brain's memory center. While we're primarily focusing on fructose today, Dr. Johnson also says that the brain and body can convert concentrated sources of glucose into fructose. This conversion of glucose into fructose, creating oxidative stress and amyloid beta plaque, this, with some scientists, they believe that this is the precursor to Alzheimer's disease. So you may have heard of amyloid beta plaques being associated with Alzheimer's disease. This is kind of that trigger that is causing that. So now that we know a little bit more about the trigger that's causing this, we can talk a little bit about what we can do. So try this. Do these 5 things to reduce the amount of concentrated fructose in your diet to protect your mitochondria from damage, and in so doing, your brain from oxidative stress and Alzheimer's disease. Number 1, dramatically reduce high fructose corn syrup in your diet. The primary sources of high fructose corn syrup are soda, and you know how we feel about soda. Just get it out. Diet soda has been shown to be okay for now. I still don't really support it, but if it's something that you need to do, then go ahead. But soda, take it out, and ultra-processed foods. If you're unsure whether or not an item contains high fructose corn syrup, read the ingredient label, and if you can't understand the ingredients, then it's probably not a food that you should be eating. Number 2, lower your intake of concentrated fructose. Again, soda and ultra-processed foods are the biggest offenders, but there are other sneaky sources of fructose to watch out for, such as large amounts of dried fruit and fruit juice, the thing that we used to think was good for us. Fruit juice, when you take the fiber and all the other stuff that comes with the whole fruit away, and now you just have this concentrated, just fructose drink, this is what you're trying to avoid, especially if your goal is fat loss, especially if you lead a sedentary life. Fruit juice contains concentrated sources of fructose that would be difficult to consume in that whole fruit form. And so regular consumption of large amounts of fruit juice can increase your overall fructose burden on the body. I like to think of it as a funnel. And when you eat fruit, it so slowly digests this food, and the funnel, it can slowly go through the funnel. When you just pour a ton of fructose in all at once, your body has to metabolize that. It's going to overflow this funnel, and that overflow, this is where we get into excess energy consumption, excess body fat put on the body, and disease. Dr. Johnson is most concerned about high fructose corn syrup and liquid fructose, and not about natural fructose in whole fruit, because it contains fiber, polyphenols, and nutrients that benefit your gut health. If you're eating ultra-processed foods, starchy carbs, or lots of dried fruit, or you're drinking soda or fruit juice regularly, start here. Aim to cut your added sugar intake in half. So track how much added sugar you get in your diet and eat normally, and then try to cut that number in half. This will help you to lower your fructose and glucose load. Then after cutting back by half, after that, aim for no more than 25 grams of added sugar per day. No more than 25 grams of added sugar. Number 3, treat sugar as it should be, a dessert. Sugar is not the enemy, but when we eat it for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, we are for sure going to start to run into some problems. The big challenge with added sugar is that big food companies, they mix it into everyday foods like salad dressings, pasta sauces, ketchup, bread, and protein bars. Look for the added sugar on packaged food ingredient labels to lower your exposure. Number 4, drink water. Drink water. Hydrate. Dr. Richard Johnson's core research into hypertension helped me understand that extremely salty foods can increase the conversion of glucose to fructose and then eventually into fat. So ensuring that you're properly hydrated, especially if you plan to consume processed, salty foods, this can help halt this conversion. Also a reminder that the problem with salt isn't the actual salt that we add onto foods. The problem with salt, just like added sugar, is that it's in everything ultra processed. So if you eat mostly whole foods, you shouldn't really have to worry too much about your sodium intake. In fact, those that do only eat natural whole foods, they could probably benefit from supplementing with sodium, something like an LMNT supplement. I take LMNT twice a day, and that's because I eat fairly whole natural foods and I exercise all the time. So I know that I'm probably a little deficient in sodium. If I were to be eating a lot of highly processed foods, I probably wouldn't need to do that. So You can see how, just like with anything in nutrition, this is so individualized. Dr. Johnson uses French fries as a classic example of this. As a high glycemic, carb-coated in salt, they're especially fattening. The salt causes a dehydration-like state that encourages the conversion of starch into fructose. That doesn't mean that you can never eat French fries again. According to Dr. Johnson, simply having a large glass of water beforehand can help to slightly minimize this impact. And every once in a while, it's not going to hurt. Number 5, increasing your lean muscle mass. Man, muscle, the magic, soft, connective tissue. Lean muscle helps soak up glucose and improves glycemic control. I saw this firsthand in my journey. Drew shared on the podcast that when he doubled down on strength training, he had more freedom to incorporate starchy foods into his diet without crazy blood sugar swings, and his fasting insulin stayed in the optimal range. So, final thoughts. We're not worried about the fructose from whole fruit or the occasional glass of juice. We should also not be too worried about some added sugar here and there, as long as we don't have that pharmacological dose that most people do have every day. The average American consumes something like 40 pounds of sugar about 100 years ago, a year, 40 pounds a year, compared to when it peaked in the 2000s at 152 pounds a year. Can you imagine what 152 pounds of sugar looks like? That's about 4 times as much sugar in the last 100 years increased. The truth is, if you're getting most of your calories from whole foods, generally staying away from ultra-processed foods like soda, and focusing on the basics of hydration, adequate protein, and strength training, then you're doing better than 99% of our people here. And as a bonus, when you build muscle mass and when you move your body properly throughout the day, minimizing as much sedentary time as you can, your body will be able to handle having more carbohydrates and sugar because you will be more metabolically flexible. So eat your fruits, move your body, lift heavy weights, take the sodas and the high fructose corn syrup and the added sugars out of your diet. There was a lot more in this podcast. It was a really long one, 2.5 hours, but that was my short overview of what I heard. If you want to check out the full episode, check out the link in the description of this episode and let me know what you thought. And that's it, my friends, for this bite-sized brain snack. Share the knowledge that you gain with your friends and family and hold each other accountable. If you enjoyed this content, it helps us a ton if you could post on your social media stories a screenshot of this episode with one takeaway that you learned, and then make sure you tag me and share your journey. You can tag me at Livin the Dream _podcast or at Coach Damien _SD, and let us know how this episode benefited you. Let us know what we missed. Let us know what we got wrong, and tell us how you have had fructose, added sugar, and anything that we talked about in this episode impact you. Message us if you have any suggestions or tips that will help your Livin the Dream team that we can discuss on future episodes. I'll be right here with you, working on making us stronger, happier, and healthier humans. Until next time, friends, keep living the dream.